I found this blog while trying to find a good place to buy things on tour. The title of the blog was Looking for Eden. After some light Googling, I found pieces of the post to be true. The guy's name was Kendrick O'Neill, and he was active just over a decade ago, and apparently he kidnapped and experimented on about 200 people. He flat out murdered 60 people, but supposedly returned 140 people to the streets, and yet the police were only able to gather 6 witnesses. Anyway, this stuff is crazy. Tell me what you think. January 3rd. Another failed subject. I reached across the examination table and turned off the audio and video recorders. I let out a long-winded sigh before removing my glasses and pinching the bridge of my nose, trying to suppress the oncoming headache. This had been the 9th one in a row to not come back, and it was starting to get harder to pick up test subjects. The local police were starting to notice the disappearance of the local homeless people, but it was a big city and there were bound to be more. I would just have to start going out further. I transferred the cadaver to a mobile gurney, which I used to transport them to the furnace. I had managed to pick up 3 subjects earlier tonight. I couldn't bring myself to call them people because if I did, then I was no longer a scientist trying to prove a radical theory. If I thought of them as people, then I was, in fact, a murderer. The 3 subjects were all huddled up together for warmth under an overpass, blissfully ignorant of their surroundings as they were obviously high as kites, with drool running out of their mouths and their heads lolled back and eyelids half open. They didn't struggle much as I moved them along into my rather warm service van. Only when I went to pick up the tiny women did I have any issue. She fought back admirably, but I tased her and she was left unconscious in the back with her assembly. Once I returned to my lab, I immediately began working on the bigger of the 2 men, as he would be the biggest problem if they were to come to. I followed the procedure, but was unable to bring him back after expulsion. The same with the other man. I began to wonder if the fact that their bodies were corrupted with the drugs, that it might play a part in why they weren't coming back. So I decided to call it a night and let the woman sober up so I could conduct the experiment again tomorrow with a cleaner subject. I will keep you updated. January 4th. I'll get right into it. It worked. She recognized the symbol. I had to play loud music through some headphones to drown out her pleas, but I managed to get her to the examination table and strapped down. I tried not to look at her eyes as I began to attach the heart monitor and charge the defibrillator. Her fear was tangible and it broke my heart, but this is something that I needed to do. I need everyone reading this to understand that I am not a monster. I don't enjoy the things that I'm doing, but they are necessary. I need to know. The world needs to know. I turned on the audio and my video recorder on the table across from me, and then I stopped her heart just as the tears broke in my eyes. Once that heart monitor was letting out a single consistent note and reading 0 beats per minute, I knew it was time to uncover the symbol. I made my way to the corner of the room and grabbed the corner of the tarp covering the patch of floor, and in one swift motion, I yanked it away, revealing a triangle with the number 8 inside of it written in red spray paint on the floor. I counted down 35 seconds on my watch and covered the symbol back up with the tarp. After the 3rd jolt, I was expecting another dead body, but on the 4th one, her eyes shot open and she began sucking in breath. I was amazed. I couldn't believe it. I gave her a few minutes to come to terms with what had just happened, and then began to question her. I asked her if she had noticed the symbol in the corner of the room, but she was very intent on screaming obscenities at me, and I let her until her voice was raw and her throat, I'm sure, was very sore. And then I said, "If you answer my questions, I will let you live." She seemed more cooperative after that. She told me she saw the entire room from the ceiling and did in fact see me uncover and recover the triangle with an 8 inside of it in the corner of the room. She described the symbol in perfect detail. This could be the beginning of something huge. I left the girl right where I had found her and the others. I left her with all the baggies that her group had collectively and $200. With any luck, she would be more interested in getting high than going to the police. January 9th. I've picked up another 10 subjects since my last update, and I just finished with the last one. I have had 6 more successful returns. Allow them to sober up before proceeding for more accurate results. And 4 of them had seen the symbol. The other 2 had different stories. One said he found himself inside a pit with a giant red talking cat that told him stories in a language that he didn't understand, but somehow knew the meaning of. He said the cat told him about himself, his entire life story, all his ups and downs, and even things he either forgotten or suppressed, and just as the cat was getting to the part of the experiment, he woke up on the table. And the other subject said he saw nothing. One second I was expelling him, and the next he was waking up on the table. I guess there's bound to be outliers. I left all the survivors where I found them, only slightly more sedated and with what I found them with, and $200 each. It wasn't much, but hopefully they could get some hot food on me for their participation or get high and pass out under another overpass. As I was going over my research notes, I found myself absent-mindedly caressing the locket around my neck. I pulled it out to look at it and was shocked that the pain was still just as raw and unyielding as the day I had lost her. The locket was in the shape of a heart, rose red with a golden outline. I opened and stared at the pictures inside and began to cry. On the left was my late wife, who died in childbirth. On the right was my daughter, who had died no more than 6 months ago. She died of leukemia. As a chemist working with cancer cells and a research grant that could have bought me an apartment building, it was my job and my unique responsibility to stop such things from happening. But no matter how hard we tried and no matter how many experimental trials I had put my little girl through, I still had to watch as she slowly faded away. After she died, I became a wreck and started losing myself. Until I had an epiphany. What if she wasn't gone, but just lost or moved on to another plane? And the hope that my little girl and maybe the love of my life were still alive in a way had carried me through to this point in my life. February 3rd. Since my last update, I've run my experiment another 60 times with varying results. So far, I've had to relocate to another city and change my vehicle twice, and have narrowly escaped detection with 3 homeless people sedated in the back of my van. Yet my experiments are still consistent and have yielded promising results. It seems that out of every 10 subjects, the averages are 5 who recognized the symbol, 3 who didn't return, and 2 who did return but saw either nothing or a very vivid hallucination. And my current success rate is about 53%. The police are already on high alert due to my current notoriety and have a detailed description of my face. But that bothers me little. I never expected to get away with this. As long as I can complete my experiments, I'll be fulfilled. When I first started this experiment, I thought I was going to need at least 1,000 subjects, but with these results, I think between 150 and 200 will be enough to get a substantial baseline. February 27th. This will be my final update. The police now know my identity and have issued a warrant for my arrest. But I did it. I can't believe I did it. I proved that human beings have a soul, and that when they die, it doesn't just wink out of existence, but is transferred to, well, somewhere. It doesn't really matter where. My little girl, my wife, they're alive somewhere. That they aren't rotting in the ground, being left for worm food. They still exist. I can't see them or hear them or talk to them, but just knowing that they are out there somewhere brings me comfort. It also brings me clarity. I am a monster. I've tortured and killed people for an entirely selfish purpose. Sure, the world might one day know of my experiments and their results, and it might help bring peace to people knowing their loved ones are still alive, just in another form of existence. But those ends do not justify the means. I have directly and indirectly killed around 175 people. Sure, some 140 people woke up and were returned to where they were found, but so many of them took the money I had given them and then overdosed. I know my daughter and my wife would hate me if they knew what I had done, and yet I'm still not sorry. knowing that they can hate me is enough to keep me happy. But at the end of my experiment, I only wish I had had the courage to find out for myself and left the world guessing. But I'm ready now. I'm ready to move on to the next stage of life, so this will be my final entry. All of my research notes and audio and video logs will be posted in a link down below. Please do not attempt to recreate this experiment. It has been a plight against mankind and should have never proceeded. Because even though I have found my wife and daughter, I have lost my humanity. The skinny man with wild hair hit the post button and then sighed aloud. He pulled a heart-shaped locket off from around his neck and stared at it for several minutes. The pain he felt was etched across his face. But there was a certain comfort in his eyes. He whispered to himself, "I love you both so much." He reached onto his desk next to his computer and grabbed a syringe full with light brown liquid. He stabbed the needle into the crook of his arm and sunk the plunger all the way. He continued to stare at the locket as he slowly started to slump forward and eventually fell out of his chair, dropping the locket and causing the glass to shatter and the two hearts to break apart. The man let out a long, continuous breath as that comforting glow faded from his eyes and was replaced with decisive fear before the light was gone entirely. The last entry after the final update was not written by Kendrick. It was posted to the blog not as a post or a comment, it was just under the story, seemingly picking up where Kendrick had left off. It also has no date stamp as all the posts and comments do, so there's no telling when it was posted. Ken had been found dead in his home from an apparent heroin overdose. He was found on March 5th, 6 days after his supposed suicide. I couldn't bring myself to watch the videos. I'm not as curious as some of you might be, so I really don't have an opinion on this. All I know is the guy murdered a bunch of homeless people and drug addicts. And until I read this, I had never heard anything about it. Just wanted to share this and see if anyone else has heard of it.